morning and welcome to the boat deck. Today I'm working on a little Westerbeke 21 diesel engine. This engine came out of a Ranger 30 that I owned for a while. It's only got 93.7 actual hours on the motor. That's 93.7. Those are actual hours for this engine. But, you know, it's an older engine now, even though it hadn't got many hours on it. I had this Ranger 30, and I absolutely loved the boat. But it had a 5-foot keel, 5-foot draft, and where I sail, that extremely limits what you can do and where you can go. And for that reason only, I sold the boat. I just couldn't deal with a 5-foot draft in the area where I sail. So I sold the boat, and the owner, the new owner's going to convert it to electric, and they have since now converted it to electric. But so I kept the diesel engine and everything about the engine, thinking I would put it in a project at some point in time. And so I've had it here in my shop for probably 5 years, and I pull it out about once a year and crank it up and run it a bit. So it's been a year since I've cranked it. But the owner, previous owner before me, he was an older gentleman and just really, he really enjoyed his boat, but he wasn't able to do much sailing or anything anymore. So he would, just go down and spend a few days on it at the dock and enjoyed it, and that was great. He put this engine in it because his engine had died, and he bought this engine new and had it installed. And that's why this engine never had any hours on it, because, the boat basically just sat at the dock. Anyway, I purchased it, and like I said, I absolutely love the boat, but with the 5-foot draft, it was just not practical for the area that I sail, at least where I sail. I like to get in some of the backwaters and stuff, so I like a shallower keel. Anyway, all that said, so I have decided I'm going to probably just go ahead and sell this engine. It's a great little engine. I just probably will never come up with the right project to put it in, and I've got 2 or 3 other motors here too, so I'm just going to try to get some of this stuff out of my way, basically. So what I'm going to do, because it's been sitting, and it runs great. Like I said, the last time I ran it ran fine. There wasn't anything wrong with it. Because it's been sitting, I'm going to replace the impeller and the water pump and that gasket right here, and I'm going to flush out and put fresh antifreeze in it. It does have a heat exchanger on it. I'm going to be replacing the heat exchanger gaskets on the ends of the heat exchanger tube here and here. And I'm going to put a new thermostat in it and a new thermostat housing gasket, which is here. Some of the paint's flaking off a bit from right around the water pump there. But the water pump wasn't leaking the last time I ran it, so it should be good. But I'm going to put the thermostat in. Like I said, it's been sitting, and I'll probably change the oil and the oil filter, things like that. But anyway, that's my project for today. I'm going to see if I can't get this thing cleaned up a bit. And this is, like I say, this is a Westerbeke 21, I think they called it. Yeah, Westerbeke 21. That's the engine right there. And this is the impeller for the water pump and the gasket, heat exchanger gaskets, thermostat housing, and also I'm going to be replacing the zinc anode. We'll be putting a new zinc anode in it as well. So that's what I'm going to do today. My GoPro camera has died, so I've been messing with it a little bit this morning, and it's just not working. So probably won't do a whole lot of videoing on this, but I may just show you the end results with it running. If anybody needs a motor, this would be a good candidate, for 20, 27, 28, 30-foot boat. Like I said, it came out of a Ranger 30, and did fine in that boat. But it's a pretty reliable engine. It's not the easiest engine to get to service as some engines, but it's a good reliable engine. This is a tube from the bottom of the oil pan so that you can drain the oil somewhat remotely here. And let's see here. Check the oil over here. Oil filters over on the side. Injection pump there. Alternator. And this is, the holding tank for the for the antifreeze here. Heat exchanger, exhaust. It's got a nice little stainless steel exhaust. Not really a muffler or water lock, I think they call it. Kind of a deal. And HBW 100 is transmission, which works fine. Like I said, it's got the electrical wiring harness. The plexiglass here is a bit yellowed and aged. I've probably got some here. I might cut a new piece for that, maybe. That'd be another good project from a CNC machine there. Cut that out and cut the holes in it and all with the CNC machine. Maybe I'll do that. Anyway, I'm going to see what I can do to get it going here. I've got it on this little rolling cart, just where I can move it around in the shop. But I'm getting tired of moving things around, so I think I'm going to let this one go. Like I say, if anybody needs a good engine or is interested, let me know. So this is a 5/16. But as you can see, it's a bit tight to get to without disassembling something, but it is doable. So that popped loose. And like I said, it's just a really thin paper gasket that goes on that thing. Kind of hard to show it in there, but right there's the impeller. Down in there where I got to replace it. Very small little snap ring or lock ring holding that impeller in. Had a hard time getting it out because my snap ring pliers wouldn't quite fit in those holes. Ended up having to use a little awl and a little tiny screwdriver to pop it out because my snap ring pliers wouldn't fit in it. And that impeller is all pieces, so I'm going to have to try to find all the missing bits and pieces and parts that came out of it, the little fins that have broken off. They'll be most likely in here, and I'm going to be changing these anyway, so I'll make sure I flush all that out good. And it is a keyed shaft. Goes in there, and that's where the little split ring goes in, that little groove right there. And I've got to clean off this surface here. That's where that paper gasket goes, and it's just a thin paper gasket. I cleaned that surface best I could with the brass brush and scraper, and this is a bronze housing here, so you want to be kind of careful with it. And then I took and lubricated this impeller just a little bit with some Dawn dishwashing detergent. Well, as usual, things are difficult on anything boat related, but I finally did get it back together. The key that was on that shaft was a half moon key, and it kept trying to push out of the groove as I tried to line everything up. So it took several tries before I finally got it to go in place and the key not slip out. But I finally got it. So that's back together. You can take the whole pump off too. There's just 4 bolts. You can take the whole pump off and pull the whole thing out. And that actually works probably easier than what I did. But I just didn't want to take it apart. I didn't have that gasket to replace that gasket, so I didn't take it apart. Next up is the thermostat. So I gotta see if I can get this thing here loose. Okay, I got them turned a little bit, so hopefully I get it off. Well, all things considered, it actually cleaned up pretty good. I'm gonna probably put just a touch of red RTV around the bottom of it, maybe. I'll clean a little more right there. But it cleaned up pretty good. Got a little bit of a corrosion right there going on. I think the gasket will take care of it, but I think I'm going to put a little bit of RTV across it. The head cleaned up good there. The cast iron, that cleaned up good. So all in all, not too bad. The gaskets are designed to fit more than one model, it looks like, but it fits this one perfect. So that's what it'll all be when I put it all back together there. I did break that hose trying to get that thing loose. That hose cracked, so I'm going to need to replace that hose right there. Clean up a little bit. I got that back together with new thermostat, and I replaced that bypass hose with a new hose there where I had cracked that one. And the other one seems to be all right. I used some 5-minute red RTV and just put just the tiniest bit between those gaskets just to kind of help make sure that that doesn't leak. I hope it doesn't leak. I don't think it will. Actually, the surface is actually cleaned up pretty good. They were not nearly as corroded as I was afraid they were going to be. Just a little bit. Belt seems okay. I'll run it with that belt to start with anyway. So let's see, what's next? The heat exchanger, I need to remove the ends and replace the gaskets, and also just blow out, clean out that heat exchanger good to make sure there's none of those little impeller pieces in there. And the zinc anode, I've got to replace that zinc anode. And then hook me up some remote diesel fuel tank to it, and grab me a battery out of somewhere, crank it up. Taking the end caps off of the heat exchanger now. If any of you have never seen how the heat exchanger, how it works, it's basically just a series of tubes that raw water runs through one side of it, and the coolant runs through the other, and the raw water picks up the heat from the hot coolant, and then it runs it out through the exhaust because it's a water-cooled exhaust. And on this engine, the exhaust actually goes to a heat exchanger here too. The coolant tank here actually is a heat exchanger as well for the exhaust, and when the exhaust comes out of the engine hot, it goes through a heat exchanger right here inside of this coolant tank. So the exhaust is somewhat cooled down before it ever gets to the exhaust system coming on out. And then once that raw water circulates through that heat exchanger, the excess water goes out and through this mixing tube right here that mixes that now somewhat warm raw water, and it just runs straight into the exhaust, and then the exhaust pressure blows it out, blows it through here and then back out through the boat, through the transom. And this is I think they call it a water lock. It's kind of like a muffler, but it also keeps water from backing back up into the engine. And this will hold enough water so that when you're cranking the engine, you don't flood the engine. That's kind of how it works. But anyway, this is all made out of bronze. This whole thing is made out of bronze and soldered together. And here's some of that rubber that I told you I had to clean out, the impeller, the old impeller that had come apart. So I've got to go through and clean all that out. I know I've got a little bit in that hose right here. I'll flush that out probably with a water hose. And And then I'll just look down all these tubes with a flashlight. You can kind of see there, you can see daylight through them. They actually look pretty clean at first glance, but I have to look through every single one of them and make sure none of them are clogged. Kind of hard to tell with the camera here, but anyway, there's an end cap I've already removed on the other end the same way. And then on the other end also, there's that zinc anode that I need to replace. And of course, I can't do anything without leaving my DNA on my work, so I'm always getting scratched up. I think I caught my hand on that hose clamp a while ago. But I'll clean this up good. And it's just a rubber seal, like you can see here, that separates the different chambers. And this loop right here, coming off of this fitting right here, this went to a hot water heater that I had on the boat, and I've just got it looped off right now. If you don't have a hot water heater, you just run a solid hose right here, but with this fitting, this T-fitting here, you can loop your antifreeze through, or your coolant through, a hot water heater, heat exchanger, and so when your engine is running, it's producing hot water for the boat. So that's kind of what's going on here. You can see here all of the impeller debris that I got out of it. So that's not all of it, but that's most of it. There's still some more on the floor. So I feel pretty confident that I got it all out. Unless it was a tiny, tiny piece, it would end up being trapped right here and in this hose, and that's where all this came out of, this hose right here. That hose coming from the pump to here, I flushed it out, and all of this debris got washed out of that hose from the water pump into that little cavity right there. So I think I got it all, at least all of it would make a difference. And I have verified that all of the tubes are cleaned out. I've run a wire down them and flushed them out water hose. But the water is pumped in, the raw water pump pumps it into here, and it comes into here, into that quadrant there of the little pipes, goes down through to the other end, and then there's a baffle at the other end that diverts that back through the lower half of here. And then once it gets to this end, it can free flow back the other direction from the top half here back into the other direction. Then it's above the baffle on the other end. And then that brings it back into this quadrant here on the final pass, coming back this way. And then it goes out up into the exhausting and then goes out the transom. They're pretty efficient heat exchangers, honestly. And like I said, it's all made out of bronze. And they're fairly expensive to have to buy a new one, I will say that. So I got to hook my hose back up over here to the pump where I flushed it out, and I got to replace these rubber end caps here, seals. When you put these rubber end caps back on, you have to be careful to not over tighten these bolts, because you can blow out that little rubber gasket. That rubber end cap can kind of get blown out around the bolts. So you have to, alternate and tension them nice and snug, and make sure that they're all tight and even as you can, but don't go crazy and over tighten them, because you can cause it to leak. So you're better off to leave it nice and snug, but not over tight, and then, see if you have a leak. And then if you have to tighten it up a little bit more, you can, but try not to go crazy with it right off the bat, because you can cause it to have a leak that you can't get rid of. Now, before I put this end cap in, I'm putting in my zinc, just because I wanted to make sure that it went in cleanly and didn't hit anything. Looks like it's going to be just right. And I've got sealant on the threads. And of course that dissolves in the seawater and has to be replaced quite often. You can replace the whole thing, the nut and all, but you can also get the zincs that just screw back into the nut. Most of the time, by the time you replace them, the zinc is so far gone you can't hardly get them out of the nuts. It's just easier just to get the whole thing. But anyway, that's right there in that raw water flow. And that zinc anode, it's like a sacrificial metal that deteriorates before the bronze. Okay, I got a little bit of diesel fuel here in a tank with a pickup and a return line. Battery hooked up. enough wiring hooked up to crank it. I've got me a bucket of water here. It'll be pulling water out of the bucket, but then my water hose is continually filling the bucket up so that I'm not over pressurizing my pump. Anyway, we're going to see if it'll crank. Now, I have already bled the injectors and I've got, fuel flowing from the injectors. So it should crank right up. We'll see. All right, hadn't been cranked in a year, so the pump's working, water pump's working. That's kill switch. It's the throttle. Pumping good water. Like I say, this is a good motor, good engine. It's got perfect compression and all that. It has literally less than 100 hours on it.